I'm going to talk about crowdfunding today, and it's going to come mostly from my experience of running an equity-based crowdfunding platform for the last 5 years, and the platform's been in operation for about 7. But in fact, the technology behind the platform, raises have been done in that fashion for about 25 years, so, which is interesting. But you know, crowdfunding, people getting together to fund things, been going on for a long time. Like even the Statue of Liberty, they managed to pay for the statue, the government, but they couldn't get enough money to put it up. So they needed to fund it, and a guy in New York got together and got a whole lot of people, thousands of people, to put in pennies really, and they ended up funding it. So that was way back then. But it wasn't really until Kickstarter came along that it got into the popular position of people sort of understanding, what is this new thing called crowdfunding? And when this particular raise, when they raised $10 million on crowdfunding for this Pebble watch, that's when people started writing in Forbes magazine and things like that and thinking, wow, what's happening here? What are we a part of? And recently it's gone more into the mainstream, to the point where you had this Veronica Mars movie project. Anybody follow that at all? It's well worth going to Kickstarter and just put in Victoria Mars. And if you want a copy of my presentation, I can send it to you, so you don't have to write everything down. You know, I didn't even know that TV series, but like every series, they've all got fans and followers, and people love them. And what happened with this one was that it just stopped. The studio said, we're not making it anymore. And so you'll see in the video, if you go and watch this video, the cast is sitting on the sofa, and they still know each other, and they're sort of thinking, God, wouldn't it be great if we could make another series, or even a movie? And then through it, up comes the thing, somebody says, well, why don't we do it on Kickstarter? Why don't we do this? And in the end, they made this raise of that. And then, of course, the guy that, I'm not sure if any of you saw the movie Garden State a few years ago, but this fella here, Zach, he decided, well, I'm going to do that too. So he raised $3 million. And so, you know, people are starting to realise that if they've got a passionate group of fans and followers and people out there that love what they're doing or love their idea, then they can raise money. And you think, why is that happening? In one way, it's a technical thing. The internet is allowing capital formation or funding to happen on a far easier way, right down to micropayments and things like that. So it means that technically, whereas before you used to send checks in, you used to do all sorts of things, it was difficult to get money out of people, it's a lot easier now. The mechanisms are there. And on the other side, this cultural disruption means that people have a desire to connect meaningfully with things. They want to do things that actually is something they've got, when they pay money over, that it actually appeals to them, that they're doing something meaningfully. So in between those two, you really get crowdfunding, that technical and that meaningful side of things. And at that intersection, there's a whole group of platforms, like there's hundreds, if not thousands of platforms that have grown up to take advantage of that connection between the technical and the things. And you'll see we've got Crowdcube and ASSOB here, and that's two of the main equity platforms in the world. Now, when somebody comes into me and says, look, we want to raise money on your platform, I have in my head these three circles: story, team, and followers. Like, I know there's a lot of marketing and there's a lot of things that you can do to increase your raise and that, but that's what I look at: story, team, and followers. And, you know, as an example, here's a good story. You see that bridge over there? That's in Rotterdam. And it was frustrating for the citizens. They wanted to get over here at lunchtime and be like it was in the old days. Look, that's what it was like in the old days. Look at that, the comparison. And they thought, well, you know, this is ridiculous. And the government said it's going to take 20 years to build a concrete bridge to do that, to achieve that. And so that was the story, that basically you can see the bridge there. They were going to crowdfunding it, and the citizens would pay as long as the money they got. So the more money they raised, the longer the bridge would be. And so that was the story, basically. And you know, you've got to elaborate it a bit. If you could put 25 euros and you got your name on a plank, and you can see the planks down there, you could get a whole element for 125 euros, or you can get a section for 1,250 euros. That's pretty cool, wasn't it? And so you imagine you're walking along, going to work, and you say, oh, there's me, every day. You could be with a different person. Say, look at me today. Oh, okay, so I'm part of this bridge. And that was the thing about meaningful. You know, they're investing something that means something to them. They want to be able to go over there and have lunch in the middle of the city instead of being over the other side of the railway tracks and the motorway. And they got a great team together. It was from the Department of Architecture and students and fundraising people. So that was the team. And then they had the followers, of course, who were the citizens. So that was the story, the team, the followers. So it was a good mix. And at the end of the day, it gets down to somewhere you have to aggregate all of those people. You know, they're not just going to randomly send the money in because they saw it on TV. They've got to have a platform. And let's put in what's your contribution, what's your name you want to have on your board, and then what's your name and all your details down here. So that's what happened. So that was pretty cool, wasn't it? And so there you had a good story, a good team, and good followers. And you could say the same about this 3D thing. Everybody heard about Pirate 3D? See, it's a Singaporean company. It's amazing. It's headlines all around the world. But when you look at it, you think, well, what is the story actually? You can go back to Neo Bing, who back in 2012 had the belief that the preference for tablets and mobiles was growing at such a rate that PCs weren't going to be used as much for driving machines and that. So he thought, let's develop something that's cloud-based. But basically the story is going to bring a $350 3D printer that people can own. In which they thought, wow, that's pretty cool, and you can get it for $250. And so that's the story, and people, this is one that I'll go on to later on about the third level survival, and this actually jumped straight to the third level survival, which was wonderful. And so they had a good team of people here, and getting together, and then of course look at the followers. So far, they wanted 100,000, they've got $658,295 as of last night. A Singaporean company raising it on Kickstarter for Buccaneer, the 3D printer. And they've got 1,699 people that think this is the best thing since sliced bread, and they're willing to send in their $250. It's pretty cool, isn't it? So again, good story, group of people that are passionate, and you can give something to them for $250, a team of people to do it, and then of course they went beyond their normal group of people around Singapore. They went out into the world because the idea and the story was so good that people believed that it was well worth investing in. So when you say story, team and followers, these are the things that we say: a convincing, compelling and credible story. And there's weight on each one of those words. And then a balanced, passionate, capable and likeable team. And balanced is interest. You've got to have the Steve Jobs and the Steve Wozniak. You've got to have the technical people and the people that have got the business nous to get the thing going. You've got to have lots of suitable people to share and engage in the story. And then you've got to have a platform to aggregate it legally and compliantly so that it works okay. And if you've got all those four and you score 10 out of 10 or 24, 25, 26 out of 30, you've got a good chance of having a good crowdfunding raise. Now in terms of crowdfunding, there's pledge, which is like donations, in which you're basically giving it for a good cause. There's reward, which is like Rocket Hub, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, in which you're actually going to get something. It's instant gratification, really. You're going to get something back from your money in a very short period of time. Peer-to-peer lending, and then there's equity. And equity is a little bit different because it's not instant gratification. You hope that when you give those people a few $1,000s, 2 or 3 years, you're going to get your money back. No, you don't know, do you? Like if you're going to get a watch, at least it's going to arrive in a few weeks or a few months. But with equity, people are hoping that you'll carry out and deliver pretty much according to the promises that you made in the beginning. So I'm going to go more into equity now, but often it starts like this. It's an idea, it's something that you've got several people supporting and wanting to bring into the world, and they're looking for support. And sometimes it's money, you know. Money's good. Money keeps the thing moving. But a lot of people at this stage, when they're with equity funding, what they do is they think that you're going to go into a room and tell the story to a VC or an angel, and the person's going to leap up from behind the desk and say, that is the best idea I've ever heard, here's the money in a bag. You know? They do believe it's all going to come like that real quick. And I will say to people, sometimes they say to me, oh, well, we're probably going to get it from a private investor. You know, we don't want to really maybe won't list on your platform. I say, why don't you do that? I said, I think it's fantastic if you find somebody that's going to put the money in. But, you know, platforms like ours and Crowdcube, they're for people that are not going to get it in one big bucket like that. And that's why it's called crowdfunding, really. It's lots of people believing in your particular idea. So whether or not it's VCs or professional investors or angels or just members of the crowd in general or private investors, they often end up, they have to be aggregated somewhere. Somebody must aggregate them so that you can do it in a compliant and legal way, and the tools and mechanisms are there to communicate. So whether it's personal contacts or customers or suppliers or pension funds or overseas investors or angel investors or sponsors or contacts, celebrities, whatever, you know, somebody has to accumulate all that, and that's what an aggregating platform does. Ours happens to look like that. We've raised 133 odd million so far, and we recently did an infographic. I've just got a couple of things from it to show you, but you know, there's been 176 pitches, and this is an important thing for you to remember. On average, the companies have sold down 21% of the raise, 21%, and the average number of investors are 14. Now, in terms of Australia, because of our legislation, we can't have any more than 20 people. We can have a huge crowd, but you can only accept from 20 mum and dad investors and unlimited professional and sophisticated. So that number is artificially high compared to, say, somewhere like Crowdcube that has an ability to raise it in smaller parcels. But still, it's the same theories. Most of them are still operational, and we have an 80-20 split between male and females at directors level, when on I think the Australian Stock Exchange it's 12%. 61% of our investors are mum and dad investors or retail, and most of them come from the same geographic area as the raise, 63%. So it's a local business, and it's often friends, fans, family and followers that are actually supporting it. I'll go through one of our raises now with you, which was one called Self-Wealth, which was basically a pension portal for managing your own superannuation on fund online. Can you do that in Singapore? It all goes into that big fund, doesn't it? You can't manage, but you can actually invest in your own house, can't you? Is that right, your own apartment? Yeah, which you can't do in Australia, which would be wonderful, which you're very fortunate to do here. But if they change the regulations now, the house prices would probably go up and they couldn't really manage it. But anyway, financial advisors have got a really bad rap in Australia because basically they've fleeced people's superannuation, taken so many fees out of them. People are terribly depressed about it, and they don't know whether they're going to have money if they're going to retire. So there's a market opening up to manage your own pension fund online where there's no advisor fees, it's a low cost, and a one annual tax deductible fee. And that was the story that Self-Wealth was pitching. And they'd never written a line of code when they pitched this, which is pretty cool. And the background of this was, if you look back in June 2004, this is a number of self-managed superannuation funds, and now the thing's gone like that, because people want to manage their own superannuation. So that was the business opportunity, you could say. In terms of the team, well, the main guy driving it was good, but also they brought on board a guy called Ron Lesh and Peter Jones, and they put in $200,000 of seed capital. But I'll tell you why it's important to have them on your team in a minute. Ron Lesh owns a company called BGL that is a software company that 75% of all the self-managed pension fund software users use his software. So he had something like, I think it was 300,000 users of his software. So isn't it great when you're doing a capital raising and one of your directors got a database of 300,000 people that use self-managed software? And so that was good, which meant they had the followers. So they had a good story, they built a good team, and then they had followers. And this was how the capital raising went. Those two guys put in $200,000 each, and then you see the first round went to 5 cents, then to 8 cents, then to 10 cents, and then that was it. 10 cents was the last thing, and they raised 1.65 million to build the pension platform. So that was a typical equity funding raise on the ASSOB platform. And he came in to see me, and he sat opposite me, he said, "Do you think we could raise this money on your platform?" I said, "I don't really usually admit that." I said, "But shit," I said, "I reckon you got 10 out of 10 in all three." He says, "What do you mean all three?" I said, "Well, like story team followers." He says, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "It's too complicated." But anyway, I said, you know, 10 out of 10 is good. And, you know, I just had that feel that it was going to work because of that particular reason. So the other thing he needed, of course, and he said to me, look, well, he reckons he could do it himself. They all think that, don't they, Darren? They think they could do it themselves. But he reckoned he could do it himself. I said, well, okay. But he knew. He actually said, I need an independent arm's-length platform. And that's the thing about something like ASSOB and Crowdcube, that they're independent, they're arm's length, they're proven to raise capital. And it's not like multi-level marketing where you go around to your uncle and say, look, I've got a business I'm starting up. I wouldn't mind if you could put 20,000 in. You know, it's always, in this way, it's actually on an independent platform. Somebody else will probably contact them and ask them if they're interested in investing, and it's in amongst a whole lot of other businesses that are raising capital. So it sort of gets rid of that stigma of, you know, you're sort of asking your friends, your fans, your family, and your followers for money. So it works very well like that. This is Danny. He found some open source software which runs networks for computer networks. He raised the 700,000 to bring the guy that founded the open source software, to put him in an office so he could write modules and sell the modules. And they already had like 10,000 people using the software. And so it was a great raise, really. And look at, he says, right company, right sponsor, right platform. It's good when they say that when they're happy. And he hopes that Carlos Slim's going to buy his company because all of his telecommunication companies in South America use this software. But he said he can't offer it to him yet because the company's too small. It's probably like change he'd drop when he's getting out of a taxi. Little Nest Furnishings, that was another one. That was designer children's furniture. And I can remember when the lady came to me and she said, look, we want to raise money for my designer children's furniture company. And I sort of thought, furniture? Oh, I don't know. I said, I don't know whether people invest in a furniture company. But you know, the good thing about it, then she said to me, and then the story elaborates. We've got film stars in Hollywood that are using our furniture. We've got rich people in China that have got it and all this. And all of a sudden I thought, shit, this might be something. Like there's something in this story. And in the end they raised $995,000. And it was a great story, a good team. And she had a lot of loyal followers. And they were, because they'd bought her furniture, which wasn't cheap, she had followers that were fairly well heeled. And some of them said, oh, we just love her furniture. I'd like to invest in her company. You know, and that's sometimes how it goes. That was a budgeting one. They raised 666,000. This was an interesting one. I've got this one here because they raised 900,000, smile.com.au. And what it was is a dental plan. And you think, when all the investment came in, you think, well, at the end of the day, it was to make it cheaper for people to go to the dentist. And what was interesting about it was that when all the checks came in, it all came on from dentists' pension funds. They were the ones investing. And so that's an example of the followers relative to that particular raising getting involved in it. But we've had like spray-on skin encryption software, plastic wine barrels, bed moving equipment, organic allergy soap, welding equipment, biodegradable detergents, iron ore, that's an iron ore mine. That's the drink processing company. All sorts of things. All sorts of companies that have raised company through this sort of thing. So let's have a look at the followers here. Just to teach you, I'm just going to finish off just going in a bit more detail about the people that actually end up investing in a capital raise. And, you know, followers, you call them followers, and some people think it's a strange word, but they're actually prospects and then they're investors. But followers sort of implies that they're people that like what you're doing with passion, and they're thinking, right, I want to follow them. And some people invest in the first day, and some people take like 5 months. And you keep communicating.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes, and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out, you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. Three is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come two more people, then three more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Isn't it great? That's how the 3D raise went. You know, in the first, I don't know, hour or something, they raised 100,000, or was it the 10 minutes? But it would have been people like that big guy going like this. All of a sudden a few people came, and then a few more, then a few more, then a few more. When you get a raise like that, it is just magical. You know, it's just, and you think, well, how can you do that? But it does take a lot of planning, because that when those 3D guys did that raise, you can assure that weeks before that they were organising people, nurturing them, telling them it was coming, we'll let you know, that sort of thing. So they engineered the whole thing there. So, you know, with the 3D one, it's one of the few raises I've seen that leapt completely over to this side fairly quickly. The third, what you call the third level of survivorship, where the smart money is, or the money that you have no connection with. And it's wonderful if you get that money straight away, but it's difficult. Of all the raises we've done, there's probably a handful that have really ended up in here. And then usually they're in here and a little bit there, which is basically, first level is friends, family, fans and followers, people that have an affinity to your business, your customers, your suppliers, people like that. And usually it's an emotional investment at that level. They love you, or they like you, or they like what you're doing. And sometimes it's the next level, you get down to the friends of the friends and that sort of thing. But as you move further along, it becomes rational. Basically, these people wanted a 3D printer for $250, and it looked like the people could do it, so they invested. It was a rational thing. It wasn't that they were thinking, oh, I hope that these guys are successful, the ones down here, we want to support them and do what they want to do. So, to wrap up, crowdfunding's at that intersection of the technical area, the ability to process transactions and record them very efficiently, and the cultural area that people want to invest in things that they think are cool, they've got meaning, they want to belong to or be part of. And that in order to do it, you've got to have a convincing, compelling, incredible story, a balanced, passionate, capable and likeable team, lots of people to sell you, and you've got to have an aggregating platform to get it all together. And that's why the crowdfunding platforms have grown up. And in the case of equity, there's a whole lot of people that end up there. And the good thing about it is that it's on your terms. When you go to a VC and angel office, you're sitting there and they're in the big chair and you're in the little chair. But on a platform, it's on your terms. You're saying to them, if you want to invest in my company, have a look through and push the button. And we had one raise in there, was pressure food, and some big investors came along with $1 million to invest in the company. And they could at least say, well, look, we've already got 27 investors that have bought the shares at 9 cents. Like, we'll give you some discount, but we're not going to take it for 2 cents. You know, it put them in a stronger position. So that's the good thing about it, that it's on your terms. So thank you very much.